Chapter 5 Augustine You Ought to Be Ashamed. It was still early in the afternoon when Augustine arrived at the clubroom. A few other members had come in ahead of him, and they made him feel very welcome indeed. When all the others had arrived, the meal was served, and a great deal of wine was consumed with it. Augustine felt very much at ease in this happy group. They told jokes one after the other, and when they had eaten and drunk their fill, they began to make plans for their next adventure. In the city lived an old professor who was no longer able to see or hear properly, and they decided to play a trick on him. He was the perfect target because his lectures always went on into the late afternoon. The plan was carefully worked out. Some of the club members even planned to wear disguises. They found things that would create plenty of noise, and armed with these things, they went to the old professor's lecture room. They banged on the door to announce their arrival. The old professor could barely hear, but that kind of noise startled him. Alarmed, he turned toward the door, which at that very moment was flung open, and the entire horde of singing, screaming troublemakers came in, making the poor man believe that they were after his life. Paralyzed with fear, he fell, chair and all, to the floor. The turnabouts roared with laughter and began ransacking everything in sight, Augustine willingly assisting them in their destruction. Just look at the students. Most of them fled at the first opportunity, but some brave ones had enough courage to defend themselves against the scoundrels. A fierce fight began, in which the professor took many blows while he tried to get to his feet. Suddenly, Augustine felt himself being firmly gripped by the shoulder and shaken violently. "Augustine, you ought to be ashamed," he was told. He looked rather surprised at the young man who had attacked him, and just as he got ready to punch him very hard, he recognized Alypius, his former friend from Tagaste. "You are here, Alypius," he stammered. "As you see," was the curt reply, "and I am wondering what Mayor Romanianus would say if he could see you right now. The poor man would be better served by throwing his money in the ocean. Come with me immediately. I have brought a letter from your mother." Augustine had suddenly been brought back to reality. The prank no longer seemed funny to him, and meekly he followed Alypius to his lodgings. "I had no idea you were here, Alypius," he said. "I've only just arrived. Father has finally been able to scrape the money together, and now I can study here. I had hoped to be guided by you, but now I see that all you can teach me is how to be a scoundrel." "Come on, Alypius, don't be a spoil-sport." Augustine tried to defend his actions. "Surely students are allowed some fun." "Oh, I agree. But if you call scaring an old man half to death fun, then I am afraid your idea of fun is quite different from mine. Again, Augustine, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Oh, and here is your mother's letter." While reading the letter, Augustine's face fell. This was not a cheerful letter. Naturally, Mother began by writing about the temptations of the big city. Although he lived far away from Tagaste, Monica occasionally heard things about her son that caused her grave concern. "I pray every day that the Lord might turn you from your sinful ways," she wrote, "and I cry myself to sleep over you every single night." Augustine knew all about that. Mother had never done anything other than pray and cry on his account, but it never changed anything. Here in Carthage, he had learned about the teachings of Mani, and these teachings suited him just fine. He had now become, and wanted to remain, a Manichaean. A little further in the letter, he found something really disturbing. Mother's finances were rather low, and Mayor Romanianus no longer seemed so eager to help. If somehow or other the money could not be found, Augustine would have to return to Tagaste. "Can you tell me what your mother has written?" asked Alypius. Augustine told him everything. "But Augustine, that can't be true." "Oh, yes, it is. Mother says that there is no more money." "What a terrible shame. I was so hoping to come here and learn from you, but after what I saw tonight, I'm not so sure. Really, Augustine, you ought to be ashamed. In Tagaste, your mother is scrimping and saving for your education, and all you do is befriend louts who waste their time and money. Does it have to be like that?" "What else can I do?" "Come now, Augustine, you are clever enough to earn some extra money. There are always students who find the work difficult. You could coach them, and if there is a poetry competition, you could send in your work. You could easily win, and it would give you enough money to remain here." Augustine became excited. He had never thought of such a solution. The first thing he did was to resign from the turnabouts. Alypius had been right. He felt ashamed at having been a member of such a club. He began to write poetry, which sold well, and when there was a poetry competition, he sent in his work and won the prize. In the meantime, Alypius had found some students who wanted Augustine to coach them. He himself enrolled first, and was followed by Hebrides, Horatius, and others. Augustine wrote his mother a cheerful letter to tell her that he had been able to find work, and was now earning enough money so that she no longer had to send him so much. However, he did not answer his mother's fearful questions. He had no intention of becoming a Christian. He wanted to remain faithful to the teachings of Manichaeus. The time when Monica no longer needed to pray for her son or shed tears on his behalf was still a long way off.